You remember it clearly. The room, the voice, the look on their face. You remember how it made you feel. Nervous, maybe ashamed, small. But then one day, if you stop and you ask, wait, did that ever actually happen? You search for the details. You can't find them. You try to trace the memory, but it leads nowhere. It feels real, undeniably real, but there's no evidence. Nothing, no witness, no context, no origin. Let's talk about a terrifying truth. You can be convinced of something you never experienced, not by hypnosis, not by science fiction, just by life, by repetition, by influence, by suggestion. Let's talk about false memory implantation. It doesn't start with someone shouting lies at you. It starts with tiny nudges, a suggestion, a look, a question that assumes a fact. Don't you remember when? Didn't he always make you feel that way? You've always been the anxious one, right? And the brain, desperate to make sense of itself, agrees. Not out of weakness, out of structure. The mind fills gaps. That's what it does. It completes. Let's talk about memory as narrative, not record. You think memory is a file, stable, passive, stored in a drawer, but it's not. It's a story your brain keeps rewriting. Every time you remember something, you're actually rebuilding it, piece by piece, emotion by emotion. And every retelling can alter it, distort it, replace it, especially if someone else is helping you do the telling. Let's talk about social reinforcement. You sit with a friend. You tell a story. They nod, add details, laugh, support. You think, that must have happened. Look how clearly they remember it too. But maybe they're just mirroring you. Maybe they're misremembering. Maybe both of you are building a fiction that feels like fact because you're sharing it. And once a memory is social, once it's confirmed by another, it feels untouchable. Let's talk about emotional memory versus factual memory. You might not remember the words or the place or the date, but you remember how it felt. And that feeling becomes the anchor. It must have happened because why else would I feel this way? But emotions can be borrowed, projected, planted. You hear someone's story and think, that's how I felt too. You start to overlay their pain onto your own past. And eventually, you can't tell where their memory ends and yours begins. Let's talk about mental repetition. You think about it again and again. You replay it at night. You analyze it. You feel the anger, the fear, and the more you rehearse it, the more real it becomes. Because the brain doesn't distinguish well between imagining something and experiencing it, not at the level of neurochemistry. The same systems light up, the same pathways activate. So imagined pain feels like remembered pain. Let's talk about authority influence. A therapist, a teacher, a parent, they don't have to manipulate you. They just have to be confident. Say something like, this may be rooted in something that happened when you were younger, and now your brain is looking for that root. And when it can't find it, it might build it. Because the brain doesn't want to disappoint. It wants to explain. It wants to resolve. Let's pause here. You thought memories were sacred, that your past was untouchable, that your truth was yours alone. But the mind is not a vault. It's a theater. And someone, and sometimes even you, can rewrite the script. You don't have to be gullible. You don't have to be broken. You just have to be human. And being human means this. Sometimes you carry ghosts that were never yours. You feel wounds that were never inflicted. You believe things that were whispered into you, like seeds that grew into forests you now call memory. It starts with a thought, a small one, a whisper of a maybe, maybe it happened, maybe they were right, maybe that's why I've always felt this way. And then, as you believe it, not because you were tricked, not because you were weak, but because the thought was comfortable, it explained things. It gave shape to confusion. It made your pain make sense. Let's talk about what happens when imagined memories don't just live in your head, but become who you are. Let's talk about emotional resonance. A memory doesn't need to be real to affect your nervous system. If your brain believes it happened, it adjusts chemically, cognitively, emotionally. You develop new reflexes, new triggers, new anxieties. You flinch at certain voices. You avoid certain places. You distrust certain people, even if they've never hurt you, even if the thing you remember never happened. Let's talk about personality drift. You were never shy, never angry, never distant, but now you are, because your past self is being rewritten by memory, false or not. And once you believe that something shaped you, you begin to live like it did. It becomes a filter, a lens, an explanation for every reaction. You say, I'm like this because of what I went through, even if what you went through was never real. Let's talk about confirmation feedback loops. You feel insecure. You remember someone saying you were always fragile. You build a narrative. You start seeing signs. You become fragile. And now every experience feeds the story. Not because the story is true, but because it's yours. And once a story becomes yours, if you defend it, you build around it, you protect it. Let's talk about defensive belief. Someone challenges your memory. Gently, kindly. Are you sure that's how it happened? I remember it differently. There's no record of that. And you freeze. You feel attacked because the memory isn't just an idea, it's your foundation. If it didn't happen, then who are you? Then why do you feel this way? Then what else isn't real? You double down, you get angry, you defend a ghost like it's flesh. Let's talk about false trauma imprinting. Even fabricated pain leaves real scars. Your body doesn't distinguish between remembered fear and imagined fear. It tenses, protects, prepares, and if you've built a memory of violation, of betrayal, of abandonment, even if it didn't happen, your body will react as if it did. And over time, those reactions harden, become traits, become you. Let's talk about social reinforcement again. You tell the story. Others believe it. They validate it, support you, hug you, say, you're so strong. And now the story is cemented because to let go of it would mean losing that support, losing your place in that group, losing the identity you've built on top of a memory that was never yours. Let's talk about self-alienation. Eventually, you feel distant from yourself. You remember being a certain way, but you don't recognize that person anymore. You feel haunted, not by what was done to you, but by what your mind decided must have been done, based on a feeling. You live in that shadow. You avoid joy, avoid love, avoid freedom, because the memory you never lived became the cage you never questioned. Let's pause here. You thought memory was sacred. You thought identity was solid. You thought if something hurt, it must have happened. But now you know, pain can be implanted. Fear can be rehearsed. Narratives can be adopted until they feel like home. Even if they were never yours, you've built a life around it. The story, the pain, the memory you carry like a scar carved into your spine, you've repeated it, cried over it, told it to people who listened and believed you. And now, someone suggests, what if it didn't happen? You freeze. Your body goes cold. Your breath shortens. Because they're not just questioning a moment. They're questioning you. Let's talk about the unbearable tension of having to ask yourself, what if I've believed something false? For years, let's talk about psychological anchoring. The brain clings to first explanations, to first stories, to the first pain that ever made sense. And when that story is challenged, your brain doesn't calmly consider alternatives. It defends because that anchor, even if false, has become a foundation. Pull it up, and the whole structure shakes. Let's talk about ego death through memory collapse. You've always said, this happened to me. You wrote about it, built your empathy on it, made decisions around it. But if you question it, even for a second, your identity begins to fray. Who are you without this memory? What kind of person are you if your defining pain was borrowed? And that shame, that quiet, secret shame, is enough to keep most people from ever asking. Let's talk about cognitive dissonance avoidance. The discomfort of maybe I'm wrong is so intense, so identity shaking, that the mind builds defenses automatically. You rewrite new explanations. You double down on old ones. You find new villains. You revise the timeline so the memory still fits. You have to, because without it, you're weightless, rootless. Let's talk about how real healing starts. It doesn't start by proving what's real. It starts by admitting what's uncertain. You say, I don't know if this happened. I don't know where this pain came from. I don't know if the memory is mine. And in that admission, the first honest one in years, something loosens. You stop defending. You start listening. Let's talk about reality testing. You go back. You ask questions. You look for records. You check journals. You revisit the timeline, not to disprove yourself, but to see yourself. And sometimes you find gaps, contradictions, inconsistencies. And the pain of that is real, but so is the relief. Because for the first time, you're not performing your past. You're investigating it gently, curiously. Let's talk about disidentifying from pain. You were never your trauma. You were never your memory. You were never the story someone else wrote in the language of your thoughts. You are more than that. Deeper, wider, older. And when you let go of the need for your pain to be true, in order to be valid, you begin to grow. You say, even if it didn't happen, I still deserve healing. Even if I remembered it wrong, I still carry wounds. Even if it was imagined, it still shaped me. And now I choose to reshape myself. Let's talk about truth as process. There may never be a clear answer. You may never know, but you can choose to stop living in a world built on a maybe. You can stop rehearsing the pain that might not belong to you. You can start asking, what is mine? What did I feel before the story took over? What does my voice sound like when I'm not echoing someone else's narrative? Let's close here. You thought memories were fact. That belief meant truth. That pain meant history. But now you see it. The brain isn't a courtroom. It's a theater. And sometimes you've been acting in a play you didn't write, but memorized anyway. The spotlight was warm. The lines were convincing. But now the curtain's falling, and you step off the stage into silence, into confusion, into freedom. Because you don't need the past to be clear, to be whole. You just need the present to be yours.